Please excuse the sound fluctuation. I experienced some internet connection problems, but I did not want to deprive you from this interview, which is packed with very powerful and practical information. Welcome to a new episode of Date Like a French Woman, the podcast to help you practice holistic conscious dating and stay away from Mr. Wrong. Today, my guest is specialized in helping you after or when you are in a relationship with Mr. Wrong and hard cases. Her name is Darcy Iverson, and I'm going to let her introduce herself because the work that she does is absolutely amazing and needed so much in the world. So hi, welcome Darcy. How are you?
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I'm so happy and so honored to be here. Mr. Wrong, right?
Yes.
Right? I mean, there's just so much that goes along with Mr. Wrong.
Yes.
So I am a love and relationship coach, and what I specialize in is helping women who have been in partnership with what I call emotionally exploitive men. And, emotionally exploitive men kind of run on a spectrum. So kind of a low level emotionally exploitive man might be somebody who, tells some lies or is kind of a little deceitful in the dating process of who he is, to, manipulating his partner to get what he wants, to all the way at the end of the spectrum to a full-blown malignant narcissist, right? And, I stand for women everywhere who are ready to, reclaim their power, reclaim their wisdom, reclaim their choices, get out of these relationships and do the work to really heal, and then find amazing, incredible love with men who celebrate who they are, who honor these women's journeys. And I love that it's like the day that we celebrate women everywhere, and that you and I are talking about women finding freedom.
Yes, because this interview is recorded on International Women's Day. A question that came to my mind, because I know that you help women extract themselves also from those relationships, and from a personal experience and from what I see with my clients, it is extremely difficult because you are completely lost in the relationship. Your references are completely off, and you need someone to guide you, to really bring you to, you don't even know, is it normal? Am I normal? Am I exaggerating? Because they are extremely talented at manipulating our mind. What is the first step when a woman comes to you and she's in one of these relationships? How do you help her first, the first thing that you guide her to do?
Yeah, so the biggest issue really is that, especially when we're talking about men who are so emotionally exploited, they're starting to go towards the end of the spectrum where they're actual narcissists. And the issue, you and I were talking about this before we hit record, is that, narcissists rarely actually seek out treatment. And so they're very rarely actually diagnosed. So that, when a man he's actually a narcissist, or he's extremely emotionally exploitive, he starts the process of breaking down a woman very fast. So, there's that initial is kind of talked about all over the media and stuff and blogs of love bombing, right?
Yes.
And that's meant to, hit a woman's system and give her a lot of dopamine, a lot of norepinephrine, and to cause her to believe that so special, and literally to get her chemically attached to him,
Yes.
right? And then immediately the phase of devaluing her begins, right? And once that phase happens, the woman automatically starts her sanity, because the way these guys do it is so subtle. Like it's a simple little, I'm gonna wear that dress to my boss's company party, and a woman goes, is he like telling me I don't look pretty? I mean, is he trying to control what I'm wearing? No, he's not doing that. He loves me so much, right? And so they start an insidious process, and it starts so subtly that by the time, you know, he's devaluing her on a daily basis, she doesn't trust herself anymore, right? So by the time she is either like so Deb reaches out to me, or by the time she's been discarded by him and she's in complete devastation, the first process for me is to actually allow her to be validated and to actually start to get her to have a realistic view of what's been done to her, and to help her see that it was abuse.
Yeah.
Because I don't recognize that what happened was actually abuse, right? So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that in the beginning.
It was, and what I find is that there is a lot of shame around the topic. I could remember from my personal experience, the last relationship, like dysfunctional relationship I had a few years ago. I remember one of my friends telling me, you're so intelligent in life, how do you always fall on these losers? And I felt so much shame. But what I did not realize at the time was that it's not that I didn't really know, because like you said, it's subtle. So little by little, you go into a reality where you don't even know who you are. And when it's ending, you don't even know what happened. You don't understand. You keep rehearsing in your head, what could I have done differently? And that's also a trap. I believe that a way to be able to stay neutral, and because you were talking about hormones and chemical addiction in the body, is to refrain from being intimate from the beginning. Is it something you advise to?
Yeah, so I talk to my clients a lot. So my clients know this conversation very well, because we have this conversation in the very beginning. And I explain to my clients that, you know, women are thinking clearly before sex, men are thinking clearly after sex. Yeah. So, you know, when women have sex, our brains release so much oxytocin, which is the chemical in our hormones that causes us to want to bond and attach to a man. So we are unable at that point to really use our best judgment to dictate whether that man would be a good partner for us, because we have these hormones that are surging that are saying, no, he's the one, he's the one, he's the one, right? Even if there are millions of red flags. And so I tell my clients, actually, don't have sex until you have the commitment you want, whether that's, and I have many clients who have waited till either marriage or engagement. And when my clients on board with me, you know, the first questions they ask is, are you sure, like positive, that a man is going to wait that long for me? And I'm like, I'm 100% positive.
If it's a good
There
guy.
are a million, there are a million high value men who will wait for you. And I'm very open, you know, I will say this here because I blog about it, I talk about it. My husband did not have sex until we got engaged. And I was upfront from the beginning. I told him, hey, I really value myself. I'm not going to get involved with you unless you are the one. I'm not going to, you know, have sex with you until I am sure. I mean, if you get with this, or, you know, you're not the right guy for me. And it's nothing personal, but it just comes from me being very clear about what I want, clear about what I'm worth, and knowing exactly where I'm going, right? And that is really how a high value woman thinks in a partnership. So yeah, there's so many guys who are totally okay with waiting. It's about us believing that we're worthy of it.
Yes, and getting over the fear of really stating what you want from the beginning, because what I find is that women have a tendency to say, oh, I'll deal with that later. And that's a big mistake, because by later, especially if you're intimate, that bonding hormone that you were mentioning, by the way, it's so strong. It's a survival mechanism, because it's what is making us bond with our babies so that we don't kill them. And by the time,
Yes.
yeah, with all the crying.
Yeah.
And so it's really powerful. And by the time you are intimate, you don't see clearly, and you don't even dare stating your limits, your boundaries, because you're afraid of losing him. So that's really, for me, a number one condition is to stay neutral, no intimacy, until you have developed some feelings and you know who you're dealing with. Now, a question that I get a lot is, but what if once we have feeling, it doesn't go well with the intimacy, with the sex? What I usually tell women, is that when there is a good communication, you can work on anything. What is your answer? Do you get that question too?
So I work with my clients from the very beginning on compatibility, right? Our clients on making sure. So I take my clients through a compatibility process that usually takes us about 6 weeks to get through. And we cover, like, you know, the significant red flags in compatibility. Like, we cover all the areas that you have to be compatible. We cover what things are negotiable, and then we cover which things aren't. And I actually think that any kind of like sexual dysfunction can really sideline a great relationship. Yes. So that is an area that I communicate with my clients, that there are certain in the bedroom are not fixable. They're not. And, you know, so for my client, like if I have a client who's like 38 and, you know, she's in great shape, she takes care of herself, she, you know, doesn't have any shame around sex, she's very confident, she's very willing to explore. She meets a guy who's like 52, which actually I don't think that big of an age gap usually works very well, but she meets a guy who's 52 and he has impotence issues. Well, that is not something that is going to be a good marriage. Like, they're going to have a lot of complications because she, you know, very confident in the bedroom, likes to have sex a lot. I mean, and he has trouble, right? So certain things that I think aren't workable. Now, if the issue is, you know, that the partner doesn't please them in the bedroom, they can communicate about that and they can work that out. But sexual dysfunction type stuff, I think, can be very challenging, especially if there's such a big age gap. Now, if we're talking like a 60-year-old and a 55-year-old, and the 60-year-old is in good shape and is willing to do things that he needs to do to be able to take care of his partner. Or let's say it's the woman with a sexual function, she's on an antidepressant, and so she has like no sex drive, right? And she's willing to, she's willing to do some things. Those things can be, you know, addressed and worked out, but there's definitely some sexual stuff that people don't realize. Sex and money are two of those issues that will derail a marriage in a minute. I mean, they're really big issues.
Yes, but those kind of matters, if you really approach dating, I always say it's almost like business. You're going to have
Mm-hmm.
and you need to qualify the person. It's not about, does he like me? You literally qualify him. And if you are powerful and at ease enough with yourself and love yourself enough, you're going to ask the right questions at the beginning, even if it's not a direct question, but you know, there are ways that you can talk about that. And that's one of the topics that I encourage my clients to talk about, as well as money, because money is also a big taboo. But if you don't talk about it and you don't know where you stand, I see a lot of relationships where the unsaid is weighing high on the relationship. So as long as you communicate at the beginning and you know where each one stands, and then you can know if it's a match or not, then anything is fixable, because you're going to know what kind of relationship you enter into. And if you know that the guy is not able to do what is a must for you, then you just don't continue dating. I think it's the difficult questions that people are afraid to talk about at the beginning. What if
I agree so much.
Yeah, like you were saying.
No, I was just going to say, I agree so much. I have so many clients who come to me and I'm like, okay, so here to address, and I walk them through how to talk about sex and how to talk about money. Yes. And so many of them tell me that they're so comfortable having sex, but not talking about sex, right? So yeah, it's so important.
Yes. And I find that money is even worse. So, but we have to. If a woman is just after a relationship with an emotionally abusive man, how can she start rebuilding her sense of worth and her self-trust? Because what I find is that because we didn't trust ourselves, like you were saying, the red flags are there. We just don't see them or don't want to see them. We have blindfolds. Then we didn't trust our intuition. We didn't trust even sometimes what was logical, because I had cases where it was obvious that the guy had several women, but you don't trust the logic. He's bringing you in a place where you're going to defend yourself instead of him explaining. How can you start rebuilding the self-trust to know that you have the inner wisdom to say, it's for me, it's dangerous, it's not for me? What would be the first step for a woman to start rebuilding that?
There's a couple of things. So, number one is to really look at, and, I went through this when I was with a narcissist. So one of the first things I did was I made sure to give myself a lot of validation for how my intuition was, even though I denied it, right? So I work with women on really giving themselves a validation and a lot of credit for how much they knew in the beginning but ignored, right? And so, because a lot will send me, even if they just hop on the phone with me, and I ask them, what red flags were there in the beginning, what indications that he had these issues, and they always had a bunch of red flags that they ignored.
Yeah.
Right. And so it helps to really empower them to see that they walked into that situation.
Yes.
Now, there are some women who are not ready to admit that truth to themselves yet. There are some women who are like, nope, there was no evidence, he fooled me the whole time, right? But a lot of women that come to me are ready to see it, and they're ready to own it, right? Another thing is for women to really start looking at all the lies that the abuser told them. Like, you're ugly, stupid, you don't matter. I really don't love you. I'm just using you for your money. You're a piece of crap. I don't need you. And to really start looking at the lies and recognizing that your abuser lied to you. Your abuser said all these things to mess with your head and to make you feel that you were worthless, so that you would never, ever, ever feel good enough to live. And you've left, right? Like, you left, and that's amazing. And so now your work is to recognize that you've been lied to. You've been lied to. All of those things are not true. Like you are beautiful, incredible. And so taking the women through a process of where they're able to really work through those lies, because they really leave them. They leave that relationship and they really believe they're worthless and they're stupid and they don't matter and all of that, right? So doing a lot of work around that and getting like a reality check. Another piece is making sure that women fight with society, because a lot of these women have been like cornered off. Like the abuser has isolated them from their friends and family, or financially isolated them. And so a big part of my work is helping them with society in a way that fulfills them. So addressing that in a spiritual way, like, do you need to get involved with your church or New Age, or what's your thing? Making sure they have friends, whether they're going to meetups, like getting them like integrated back to the community, like whether they need to join narcissistic abuse support groups online, you know, whatever they need to do to start getting validated and feeling supported in the healing process, right? So there's a lot of things that really work to feel, you know, a little bit better, but also really telling women, like, okay to grieve, and it's okay to be in pain, and it's okay to miss him. Because so many people tell narcissist abuse survivors, he is an abusive jerk, get over it. But these victims, these survivors, they loved him. Like, they actually loved him at the time. He mattered to her. She cared about him, really cared about him. And so allowing and giving her permission to feel grief and loss is like the most important thing like in the world. Like, it's critical.
But I think that only a person who went through that can understand that, like, because you and I went through that. So we relate, we can understand. And that's why we can help these women, because we felt it. Because the thing is, you need someone who will witness your pain too. It's extremely important, and not discard it, because you're entitled to feel whatever you're feeling. And what I find is sometimes it's even harder if the person was not overtly, completely abusive. It wasn't obvious, like he didn't really tell her that she was ugly, but he acted in a way that sent that message to her. And so she's not even sure that he was really a bad guy, because they always find a way to get out of the situation. And you end up completely confused with did I mess it up? Was he really a good guy? Or was I blinded? And that's even worse, because then you don't even know. So the missing that person is even worse, because you ask yourself, did I lose a good guy because of my acting crazy? Or was it really a covert manipulator and I have nothing to, well, I shouldn't go back to him? Don't you think that it's the case sometimes? Did you come across women who were not even sure that they were really dealing with this kind of manipulators because they were not obvious?
Yeah, so that is like somebody who's with a covert narcissist,
Yes.
right? And the way that this looks for a lot of women and men today, but there's a lot of female narcissists, right,
Yes,
out there.
true.
But the thing is that a narcissist knows that they abuse outside of the home, or they will be known, they will be caught, right? And there's always like the progressive, like malignant narcissist who can get pretty out of control. But with covert narcissists, they absolutely will, be extremely abusive at home and then turn really nice and then be abusive, like through email and text, and then be nice and then be abusive. And it really is like intermittent reinforcement, and it causes victims to doubt their own reality.
Completely.
There's so much crazy making. Yes. So by the time those women come to me, they don't know what's real or imagined.
Yeah.
They don't know what's true and what's not. That they're so lost. And the gaslighting is the worst part for them, because they literally have had somebody who's been telling them, like, there's a lot of infidelity that goes on with narcissists, right? And so a lot of these women will come to me and they'll tell me stories like, they caught their narcissist by looking through his phone or looking through his emails, and they'll like show him a text or whatever, and he'll claim that, it's not his or whatever, and then he'll turn it around and be like, that this is your crazy childhood stuff, that you don't trust me, right? This is because of what happened in your childhood. And she'll go, is it because of my childhood? Like, she starts to doubt herself. And then there's this whole crazy making thing that happens, right? So yes, a lot of those women come to me, or they get discarded, and they think it's all their fault. They think they ruined the relationship. And they didn't ruin it. There was they never had a chance. They never stood a chance.
And it's so devastating. I see women being really hating themselves, and where I first start is self-forgiveness for not seeing, and whatever they thought that they did to destroy the relationship, to forgive themselves too, because that's a big part of it. What I know that when you start practicing self-love at all level, you are going to become stronger, more empowered, and be able to spot those guys faster. And I find that it's a turn-off for those guys, some kind of, you repel them because they don't like the women who are too self-confident and they can see through them. Do you work a lot on loving yourself, taking care of yourself in your coaching too?
Yeah, that's a whole big part of my coaching. So my coaching package is actually a 6-month package, and that's a huge piece. I have, a piece that deals with recovery, a piece that deals with self-love, a piece that deals with understanding men, the dating process, all those parts. And, a narcissist or an emotion, he will actually typically start some kind of drama in the beginning of the dating relationship to see if you actually do love yourself and you have boundaries.
Yeah.
And if you do, he will leave you alone. And if you don't, then he's going to pursue you.
Yeah. They can almost
self-love is,
they can smell a woman who doesn't have enough self-love. It's like, I call it, it's the predator's Velcro, I call it, because if you have enough self-love, they will not stick. If you don't, they will. It's like a Velcro, literally. So I'm big on self-love too in my coaching. And what I know that people have a hard time sometimes defining self-love for themselves. So I love asking my guests for their own definition, because it is so broad. That way it gives ideas to women and other people to know what they could do, what it could mean, and where to start. What is your definition of self-love?
So my definition of self-love is actually more of that it's an experience that you have. Right? So because self-love is, to me, is like a journey. It's not actually a destination, right? And I hear so many people talking about self-love as though it's a destination. Like you're going to, you know, you're going to have self-love and you're going to arrive, right? You're going to love yourself, and then the guy's going to come, the Mercedes is going to come, and you're going to be there. And it's like, no, that's not how self-love works, right? You came into this world as yourself, and you're leaving this world as yourself, and every day is an evolution, right? And so, you know, for me, self-love is a part of, it's everything from how I talk to myself in my mind, to what I put in my body, to how I move my body, to how I allow other people to talk to me, to show up for me, to what my beliefs are and how I you know, form new beliefs. It's everything to the experiences that I allow myself to have in the world, to everything down to my self-worth and self-care.
Yeah, of course.
You know, like, yeah. And for me, honestly, when I left a narcissist, self-love for me was like the tiniest little action of, you know, taking a bubble bath. Like, seriously, that was the thing for me. Now it's evolved all the way to minds, like having a powerful mindset, right? But for people who are coming out of a abusive relationship, like controlling their mindset, that's not going to happen right now. Like that's just way there. So for them, you know, self-love is going to look like having compassion for that they were in an abusive relationship, just showing some self-compassion, right? Forgiveness, forgiving themselves. You know, I actually don't recommend forgiving the guy right away, because these guys have a tendency to hoover over and over and over again. And I have found that if you forgive too quickly, then you're susceptible to going back. So I do help my clients forgive, but I do it later. You know, we do it later. But forgiveness of self is a part of self-love, doing that. And self-love is a feeling, you know, it's that feeling that you get when, you know, you like massage your arms and talk to your body and thank your body for what you've been through, you know. And I mean, it's all of that. And for abuse survivors, self-love is when you go rent your first apartment without the abuser. You know, that's self-love.
Or reconnect with your friends after you were isolated for so long. And
something that's a big self-love thing for abuse survivors is deciding who you're going to and who you're not going to tell about the abuse.
Of course. Yeah, because some people you don't want them to know because they're going to bring you down even more. And usually you are judging yourself enough. You don't need to add to the plate with judging you. Self-love is, it's like a verb. And the way we do self-love is through practices, whether it is a mental practice of stopping the self-criticism or like you were saying, a bath, whatever it is. What practices, do you have one or two practices that you go back to on a regular basis to love yourself?
Yeah, so I actually do a lot of journaling. So I do a lot of, my big thing is really working on my mindset and really working on focusing on, you know, I personally believe, and this is very hard for women coming out of abusive relationships, and it was not something I believed at the time. My thinking has definitely evolved a lot. But I personally believe that everything is happening for me and not to me. And I always, every day, constantly doing a lot of writing and a lot of mindset shifting to where I want to be, where I'm going. You know, are the thoughts in my head serving me? Am I headed to where I want to be? And honestly, that's resulting with a really powerful coach for the last year, and, you know, getting really clear about behaviors that I had in the past that caused me to, you know, not create the life I wanted. And I've been fortunate enough for the last several years to have a really in life, right? But there were certain things that I was doing previous to that that were causing me to end up in unloving and uncaring situations. And so today I'm very mindful of my mindset. I'm very mindful of what's going on in here, so that I can make sure that I'm choosing the right experiences, so that I'm choosing the right people in my life, and that I'm going where I want to be going. And so, you know, I post on Facebook a lot, journaling prompts. I send them out on my email list because I'm always wanting to help people learn how to powerfully align their thoughts in a direction that they want to be going, right? You know, like this morning for me, like I've already, you know, I got up this morning and I went on an amazing walk, and I was doing affirmations when I walked, and I've done EFT tapping, and I've done journaling on my mindset, and and I've worked out, and, you know, it's like I'm just very ambitious about having a good life. But tapping, EFT tapping, which I do with my clients,
me too.
That helped me so much. A narcissist. EFT tapping is amazing, and I would encourage it to anybody.
I use it in my life too. I use it with my kids. I use it all the time, every time I'm triggered, because it's literally rewiring the brain. I had a question that just disappeared, but that's okay. And
sorry.
That's okay. No, that's fine. I mean, we flow with the energy. What I noticed in what you were saying, and that's the point of power, is when we recognize that we create our reality both with our brain and our energy. And only then you can become powerful to change it, because if you are a victim, you have no power. So when you were talking about thoughts, having the right thoughts will lead you to have the right actions and will lead to the results that you want in your life. So that's, to me, where self-love starts, is to know how you trick yourself constantly, because we do. And to start knowing yourself when you're not looking, like, you know, the unconscious mode that we step into. Where can people find out about you?
Yeah, the thing I was going to say, and then I'll tell you that because I know
Sorry.
I've been so chatty. So something that's so important too for survivors of abuse is boundary work.
Yes.
And like you can start so small with boundary work, but it really, when you're doing active boundary work, it increases your self-confidence and self-love like a rocket. I mean, it's so empowering. Yeah. So anybody can find me at darcyiverson.com. And I think that you can you can directly schedule an appointment with me there.
Okay.
You can directly sign up for my email list. You can directly access my Facebook, Instagram, anything from there.
Okay, so I'll put that in the description as well. Before we part, if there was one last recommendation or gem you wanted to leave the audience with, what would you like it to be?
Yeah, so my last recommendation would be, if there is physical abuse in your relationship, to, get serious help, right? To, really take that seriously, and, call a domestic violence hotline, call a domestic violence shelter, take it seriously. Know that like not a game. That's not, something that, that's dangerous. That's very dangerous. And so to just tell everyone out there, there's going to be women who are going to watch this who are going to be like, well, I'm in a physically abusive relationship. And it's like, no, call for help. Call domestic violence shelter. Yeah. They're all over the place. And, get help. Because I don't want that it's always just as easy as hiring a coach and, getting out of there. Like, some of you are going to need professional help to get out of your situation. And the last thing I want to say to everybody is that the recovery that happens after a narcissistic relationship, when you have support, when you have the right support, the possibility for your life is limitless. Yes. The ability for your self-confidence and your ability to love yourself and the man or woman that you could be with is unbelievable. And so there is so much hope. And even though it doesn't feel that way when you're in the midst of being devalued and discarded in this moment, or you just got discarded, even though it doesn't feel that way, I'm telling you, the beauty that lies on the other side is, there's not even words to describe it. And so I want to leave everybody with a message of hope. Yeah.
Thank you. That's so important, because you're not only going to change your relationships, you're going to change your whole life. Every area of your life is going to be better. Every area. Thank you, Darcy. It was really a very supportive interview, full of support and hope. And I really hope that the people who need it will come across that. And I know that the universe is working in mysterious ways to lead people who need to hear that exactly to the information they have to listen to. I want to thank you again for being part of this interview today. And I wish you even more success in the great work that you are doing for women.
Oh, thank you so much. I had so much fun.
Thank you. And for our listeners and viewers, I'll see you next time with another guest, or by myself if you're listening on iTunes. Have a wonderful life full of love and boundaries.
If you like this video, please subscribe to our channel. And for questions, information, or to book a free 30-minute introductory coaching session, please visit datelikeafrenchwoman.com.